Hello book fans, I'm going to be reviewing Prince Harry's book about his life, tributes and troubles and all that kind of business, and it's quite a thick read but quite an easy read as well. As books go, there's a bit of controversy around it for some reason. I really don't know why, because it's a biography, and it's basically about a guy with a family, and he also, he goes to war. He also has a mum who dies. The usual stuff. He gets married. His brother gets married, and some of these are spoilers. I should have said spoiler alert, shouldn't I? And there's not a lot in it that is actually controversial, unless you talk about the paparazzi. Now, criticism-wise, people are saying, he shouldn't have written it. It was critical of the royal family. I don't think it really is that critical of the royal family. There is some criticism in there, though, so bear that in mind. If you're a fan of criticism, you might just enjoy this book. So keep half an eye on it. How does it go then? How does the story go? Well, basically we start out with it's chronological, so it starts off when he was about 12 years old, because that's when his mum died. So there's a big start. We've got Princess Di in there, and the way it's structured, it's taken into account parts of his life around that time, how he dealt with or didn't deal with his mother's death, and having to walk behind the funeral carriage, and the trauma basically. And there's a lot of echoes of trauma throughout the book, trauma of his mother's death, and that gets discussed throughout it really, and they talk about how he's been counselled and how he's been helped with it. But will it get fixed? I don't know. He seems like he's got all. The thing is, it comes across as a genuine book. Yes, there have been some inaccuracies found out by the newspapers. For some reason, all the newspapers are trying to reel off loads of factual errors in order to discredit the book for some reason. I'm not sure why. Not because the main criticism of this book is aimed at the media and the newspapers and the kind of reporting that they're doing there. So yeah, it's one of those that if you believe everything you read in the newspapers, you're not going to be getting the full facts. And I'm not naive enough to believe this is 100% as well, but at least it is genuine from his perspective, even if there are errors. Now, we're talking about an error that with Eton, when he thought he was at Eton when the Queen Mum died. Apparently he was on a ski trip with some kids from Eton when the Queen Mum died. So apparently that means everything else is 100% false. That's what the media are trying to say, and there are a few errors that they've picked out. I kind of wish they'd done a decent proofreading of it. There's also one of the other big ones, because it's a really interesting read from the perspective of what happened with his mum and her death. So if you want to revisit that and the way the paparazzi had their part to play, nasty part. But we also have the military side of it as well, which is actually quite interesting from the perspective if you want to know what it's like to learn to be a gunner on an Apache, for example. So that was his second tour of Afghanistan. The first one, he was in these little very minute bases on the front line, and he was doing kind of a air traffic control in a way, where you're controlling aircraft on the ground, sending into targets, that kind of stuff. But the second one is where there was controversy because he told everyone that he killed 25 people, therefore the Taliban are going to try and kill him even more now. They're probably already trying to kill him or other members of the royal family. They're probably not going to try any harder to kill him. They're going to take advantage of weaknesses where there are. If they are trying, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not in terrorist circles. But I'm going to read out the bit that was controversial because it said there's 25 people killed, and there was some kind of statement from the military, the army, some dude or something, I can't remember who it was, who said it was wrong. The soldiers don't actually ever know how many people have killed or recognise it or talk about it or something. Okay, now this is addressed in his book about the Apache. So I'll read it out. Most soldiers can't tell you precisely how much death is on the ledger. In battle conditions, there's often a great deal of indiscriminate firing, but in the age of Apaches and laptops, everything I did in the course of 2 combat tours was recorded, time-stamped. I could always say precisely how many enemy combatants I'd killed, and I felt it vital never to shy away from that number. Among the many things I learnt in the army, accountability was near the top of the list. So his number was 25, basically, but it didn't make him feel ashamed, and I think that was the problem there, the words he chose there. And the thing is, right, from his perspective, he's a soldier, he's doing the right thing in his duty in battle. So therefore, gunning down the Taliban, the enemy, was the right thing to do. And I don't think that can really be argued with. Otherwise, why would we be there in the first place in theatre? But the other thing is that he talks about, which is quite interesting just from a military perspective, is how he gets designated the targets, and he has to call back to the operations to get permission, basically, to shoot the target. And often he complains about not getting to shoot the target, even in the case of once when he got to, he witnessed the actual Taliban firing on trucks, and he couldn't immediately attack the target. That sounds crazy, but I don't know. There's a lot of protocols out there, things that they need to adhere to, which Prince Harry wasn't super happy with, because he just wanted to protect the people on the ground. He doesn't come across as a psychopathic killer like maybe the tabloids have put him out to be. I don't know. I've not read a lot of the tabloids, but I think the account of his training, his time in the military, is very interesting, and it's good. It's good to hear. Overall, it's positive. Even though he disagreed with the decisions getting made, he understood why they were getting made the way they did. And he doesn't come across as a psychopath, and I can see why he would have a number. I was sceptical. Why did he know the number of 25? It sounds like a rounded up number, but as I need to watch the videos, then that would make sense. But even so, maybe 25 is a rounded up number. It sounds like it is. But he would have a rough idea, I imagine, after watching the videos back of the gunfire and all that. And he was actually circling around and checking the target was down, for example, in one case. But I'm not going to spoil that part of the story. A lot of it talks about the royal family as well. So he moves from the phase of being a child to be an adult, and going into the army, having a career, and all the time he's buffing up against his brother. So Wills and Harry, they've always been together in the media, so he talks about that aspect of his relationship, and he feels like his brother didn't quite enjoy that, and that there was competition between the two as brothers. I'm also ginger, you can't tell, but he's ginger. I don't dye my hair, it just turns this colour. But I'm a bit ginger, he's ginger. He's the younger brother, It's a lot that I can associate with brothers, that you do get that way. That's the way it comes across. It doesn't come across... At parts he says, haha, his brother's bald, haha, which does come across badly, but I think that's probably the way I would do it. But I probably wouldn't write it as honestly in a book as enjoy his baldness. I just enjoy it pointing out in person instead. But there's also a rumble in the fight scene that they talk about in the newspapers, which really isn't a big deal. I don't think it's made off as being such a big deal in this, and it's really just something that brothers do, even as adults. But not me and my brother, but they can do. And they end up having a bit of a rumble. It doesn't sound like they were fisting each other, punching. I mean, not fisting, that's the sex, yeah. But yeah, it doesn't come across as bad as the media made it out to be. Everything that the media makes things out to be bad is a reason for it, and it kind of underlines this idea that he is getting negative press, and a lot of the negative press is because he is now criticising the press. He's also suing various newspapers for the publishing. Oh, they are Meghan. I should point out to people, this is book, I think it's written by a ghostwriter. It's definitely not written by Meghan, just in case you wanted to, you've been told that in the media, which a lot of the Twitterati are cracking off about that. That's nonsense. It's just the thing is, it comes across well, and I think his brother and Charlie boy come across well, and Camilla. I mean, it's all very complicated. It sounds to me, the way it reads, it sounds like families that are going through difficult times with not only wedding planning. That is a nightmare, wedding planning. Never do it. Just do it. Just elope instead. It's a lot easier. So with wedding planning and all that, it generates these things. Deaths also generate these problems as well. So there's a lot of complicated things that families go through, and if you write it down, I wouldn't write down half the things that that I think, because I think it just maybe make me sound bad, maybe make my family sound bad. I don't know, but certain situations, if I wrote them down honestly, would sound pretty terrible. But they're pretty lame in comparison. I've got to be honest. I can think of some more worse stories, I suppose, that would put certain people in a bad light within my family structure. But I don't write those stories because I don't want to. And maybe that's what the case with Harry. Maybe he's held back, and I think he probably has. Yes, it comes across badly because Wills comes across as an angry guy who seems to want to control Harry, and Charlie boy seems to come across as King Charles now, comes across as somebody who isn't really dealing with a problem. And the main problem that they have with the media is that their own media representatives in the royal family are guiding them with the media outputs, and effectively telling them what to do. Almost, he calls them the king. They are kings, or one king between three of them. And he says those that are the main friction point, and it really explains why Harry left the royal family. He hasn't left. He didn't want to leave. I mean, that's what it all says. The thing is, if you need to read this as well as reading the newspapers if you want to have a more balanced opinion. I'm not saying believe this. I'm not saying believe all of it, or maybe just believe some of it. Believe what you believe, but look at it from both sides of the picture. And I don't think the royal family come across badly in this. But the structure of the royal family does come across badly in the way it's organised with the staff, and particularly in relation to the media. But the thing is, he always tries to talk about the good of people in the royal family, not just the royals, but the staff that work for them. There are a few people who he slates massively. So it's an interesting read, basically. It's a 4.5 out of 5 experience, mainly because it's a memoir. If you're into memoirs and diaries, people books, then it's probably a 5 out of 5 experience for you. But if you're into the royals, then I think it's one of the most eye-opening kind of stories, because it tells you about the inner workings of the royal family as well, in quite an honest way that we've not seen before. I don't know. I've not read a lot of royal books, but I've heard a lot of things, on the radio, etc. News. Anyway, this is the book. Get it from the library. I got it from my local library. It's a lot easier than buying it, although there's about a year or 2 years waiting list for this, so this is going to go back tomorrow to make sure other people can read it, because it's important, I think, if you want to have an opinion on it. If you don't have an opinion on it, don't read it. But don't come talking nonsense about Meghan, Harry, until you know whatever full facts are, whatever you can know about them, instead of just quoting newspapers. And got any questions, drop them down below, but I'm not going to talk about facts, that's all in the newspapers, isn't it? So, we've heard enough of that. But thank you very much for watching, and drop a like or a dislike if you dislike me being slightly positive about Prince Harry, but I think he's been given a bit of a bum steer, a bit of a bum deal. There's little baby Prince Harry there. Good book though. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day, everyone. I'm going to go back to reading it. I've finished it already. I'm going to pretend to read it.